Welcome to History Orbit, where the past crackles to life with every step you take into its forgotten corners. Imagine a city forged in fire, its streets alive with the clamor of hope and hardship, where every sunrise is a dare to dream bigger. This is Chicago, 1882, a place where ambition clashes with survival, and every soul carries a story worth telling. Before we plunge into this world, hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey through time, because stories like these are why History Orbit exists. Picture yourself in a cramped tenement room, the air heavy with coal dust and the faint echo of neighbors stirring in the dark. You're about to meet the Callahan family, Irish immigrants who left the rolling hills of County Cork for the gritty promise of Chicago's South Side. Their names won't grace history books, but their lives pulse with the raw energy of a city reborn from the ashes of the Great Fire of 1871. Let us slip into their world where every choice is a gamble, and every dawn is a chance to carve out something better. The year is 1882, and the day is just beginning. The city hums outside, a restless beast of industry. But inside this tenement, the Callahan family is already fighting to make it through another day. The room is a mere 300 square feet, a dim, creaking box of splintered wood and peeling plaster, lit only by a single oil lamp that flickers like a heartbeat against the pre-dawn gloom. John Callahan 40 stirs on a sagging rope bed, his calloused hands brushing against the rough wool blanket he shares with his wife Ellen 36, and their youngest Maggie 7 who curls into a tight ball to ward off the morning chill. The air carries the stale scent of last night's boiled cabbage, mingling with the faint tang of rust from a leaking tin roof. A common complaint in Southside tenements, as city health reports from the era often noted. John's mother, Kathleen, 62, slumps in a wobbly chair by the wall, her breathing heavy with the ache of rheumatism worsened by Chicago's damp winters, which claimed many elderly lives according to 1880s mortality records. Their son, Thomas, 16, is already gone, having slipped out before dawn to claim a prime street corner for his newspaper route. A hustle that earns pennies but fuels his dreams of something more. The walls are thin, so thin you can hear the Polish family next door muttering morning prayers, the German couple arguing over a lost coin, and an Italian mother singing a lullaby to a fussy baby. A symphony of immigrant lives packed into this overcrowded tenement block, where over 20,000 people per square mile lived, as Chicago's 1880 census recorded. John has 15 minutes before he must leave for his 12-hour shift at a steel mill, where the roar of furnaces and the risk of injury are as constant as the paycheck. He can't afford to lose. He sits up, his joints creaking like the bed, and glances at Ellen, who's already awake, her nimble fingers mending a tear in his work shirt by the lamplight. It's a small act of defiance against their poverty, this neatly stitched shirt, a point of pride that says the Callahans haven't given up. Ellen catches his eye and offers a tired smile, murmuring about their grand palace of a home, her voice light, but laced with the weight of years spent stretching every penny. John chuckles, a low rumble, and replies that it's at least warmer than the Cork winters, though the draft seeping through the cracked window pane begs to differ. The room is a museum of their survival, a single table cluttered with a chipped teapot, a loaf of day-old bread, and a tin cup Maggie uses for water from the courtyard pump, which often runs brown, a fact city inspectors lamented in their reports. Kathleen stirs, wincing as she shifts in her chair, her hands gnarled from years of laundry work back in Ireland, now too weak to hold a needle for long. She mutters a blessing in Gaelic, her voice a soft anchor to their roots, and Maggie, still half asleep, echoes it, her small voice bright despite the gloom. Outside, the South Side is waking up, the distant clang of horse-drawn streetcars mixing with the shouts of early vendors, and the low whistle of a factory starting its day. Chicago is a city in overdrive, rebuilt in just over a decade since the fire that gutted it, now boasting over 500,000 souls, nearly half foreign-born, according to census data. The Callahans are one thread in this tapestry, their tenement a microcosm of the city's promise and peril. John pulls on his patched boots, each step a reminder of the 12 miles he'll walk to and from the mill. Unable to afford the 5-cent streetcar fare, Ellen hands him a cloth bundle, his lunch of bread and a sliver of cheese, and their fingers brush. A quiet moment of connection before the day pulls them apart. Maggie, now awake, tugs at her mother's skirt, asking if she can visit the market later, her eyes bright with the innocence of childhood. Despite the diphtheria outbreak that exclaimed to neighbors, this month a grim statistic from city health logs, Kathleen warns her to stay away from the sick, her voice sharp with fear. But Maggie's already distracted, humming a tune she heard from an Italian girl in the courtyard. The tenement is alive now, doors creaking, footsteps thumping on warped stairs, and the smell of frying onions drifting from somewhere below. John steps to the window, peering out at the alley where ash barrels overflow and children dodge laundry lines to chase a stray dog. The sky is grey, heavy with the smoke of 1,000 chimneys, but there's a pulse to it. A city that never stops moving. He thinks of Thomas, out there somewhere, hawking papers to businessmen and factory workers. His sharp tongue and quick feet his only defense against the street gangs that demand a cut of his earnings. Ellen begins her own preparations, folding the blanket and setting out a needle and thread for her day at a garment workshop, where she'll earn a few cents per shirt, her hands racing against the clock to keep up with the foreman's demands. The work is grueling, the pay barely enough to cover rent, yet she carries herself with a quiet dignity, a trait that drew John to her back in Ireland. The room feels smaller as the family moves in its cramped dance, each person carving out space for their morning rituals. Kathleen pours weak tea from the teapot, rationing it carefully, while Maggie kneels by the bed, practicing her letters on a scrap of paper, a skill Ellen insists she learned despite the lack of a school nearby. Education was a luxury for most tenement children, with only 60% of Chicago's school-age kids attending regularly. As reformers like Jane Addams later noted, the sounds of the tenement swell, a neighbor's cough turning into a hacking fit, a baby's wail, the clatter of a tin bucket dropped in the courtyard. John checks his pocket watch, a battered heirloom from his father, and knows he must leave soon. He kisses Maggie's forehead, nods to Kathleen, and squeezes Ellen's hand, their eyes locking for a moment that says more than words could. He steps out into the narrow hallway, where the air is thicker, heavy with the smells of sweat and cooking grease, and descends the rickety stairs, each step groaning under his weight. The tenement is a warren of lives, 30 families packed into a single building, sharing one pump and 2 outhouses, conditions that fuel disease and discontent, as documented in city sanitation reports. Outside, the south side greets him with a blast of cold air and the distant roar of a train, carrying steel and grain to feed Chicago's insatiable growth. John's journey to the mill will take him through streets that are both a marvel and a menace, past new brick buildings rising alongside wooden shanties, past saloons where men drown their wages, and churches where women pray for better days. The city is a paradox, a place of towering ambition and grinding poverty, where the Callahans and thousands like them are both builders and victims of its progress. Ellen, left behind, begins her own day, herding Maggie toward the pump to fetch water, a task that means dodging the courtyard's chaos of laundry, gossip, and stray cats. Kathleen stays behind, her hands too shaky to help much, but her stories of Ireland keep Maggie tethered to a past she's never seen. The tenement is a world unto itself, a fragile community where survival depends on shared burdens and whispered secrets. As John steps into the street, the city's pulse quickens, pulling him into its rhythm, a rhythm that will carry the Callahans through triumphs and trials before this day is done. But for now, the streets are calling, and the story of their day is just beginning to unfold, a tale of grit and grace that waits just beyond the tenement's walls. The sky over Chicago is lightening now, a faint pink breaking through the haze of coal smoke, and the streets are coming alive with 1,000 small drummers. John Callahan steps into this world, his boots crunching on the uneven cobblestones, his breath visible in the chilly dawn. The south side is a maze of alleys and avenues, each corner holding a piece of the city's story. From the vendors setting up carts to the children darting through the crowd chasing a chance at a penny or a dream. Thomas, somewhere out there, is already at his corner, his voice rising above the din, shouting headlines to draw a crowd. Ellen and Maggie will soon join the throng, their own paths weaving through the city's chaos, each step a thread in the tapestry of their lives. The tenement fades behind John, but its weight stays with him, a reminder of why he pushes forward. why he endures the mill's heat and danger. The city is waking, and with it, the Callahan's story is about to spill onto its streets, where every moment tests their strength and shapes their future. The Chicago dawn breaks over the south side, a faint pink glow piercing the haze of coal smoke, and the city stirs like a giant shaking off sleep. John Callahan steps from the tenement's dim hallway into the sharp chill of the street, his boots crunching on cobblestones slick with morning dew. The air hits him like a slap, thick with the smells of manure, baking bread, and the acrid tang of factory smoke. A sensory assault that defines this city of 500,000 souls, as the 1880 census recorded. His breath clouds in the cold, and he pulls his patched coat tighter. The weight of the tenement still clinging to him, Ellen's quiet touch, Maggie's hopeful chatter, Kathleen's weary blessing. The street is a living thing, pulsing with the clatter of horse-drawn carts, the shouts of vendors, and the distant shriek of a train hauling steel to fuel Chicago's relentless growth. John's path to the steel mill stretches 12 miles ahead, a journey he makes on foot to save the 5-cent streetcar fare, each step a reminder of the family he's carrying on his shoulders. The South Side is a patchwork of ambition and grit, new brick buildings rising beside sagging wooden shanties, their frames still scarred from the Great Fire's aftermath, a decade-old wound that Chicago has turned into a badge of resilience. The city rebuilt itself in record time, its population doubling since 1871, driven by immigrants like the Callahans who poured in from Ireland, Poland, Germany, and Italy. As historical accounts note, John passes a saloon, its doors already swinging with men drowning last night's sorrows, and a church where women kneel in early prayer, their rosaries clicking softly. The street is a stage and every passerby plays a part, the milkman balancing cans on his cart, the rag picker sorting through ash barrels, the children dodging laundry lines to chase a stray cat. John's eyes scan the crowd, searching for Thomas, his 16-year-old son, who's out there somewhere, hawking newspapers with the kind of hustle that makes a father proud and nervous all at once. Thomas, at this moment, is 3 blocks away, staking out his corner near a bustling rail depot, where the Illinois Central's tracks hum with the promise of commerce. His voice cuts through the morning din, sharp and confident, shouting headlines about a new skyscraper, the Montauk Block rising downtown, a marvel of steel and ambition that has Chicago buzzing, as newspapers of the era reported. His stack of papers, tied with rough twine, sits on a crate he dragged from an alley, his only claim to this patch of sidewalk. Thomas's eyes, bright like his mother's, dart across the crowd, spotting a businessman in a crisp suit, a factory worker with coal dust still on his face, a woman hurrying to market with a basket on her arm. He calls to them, his pitch practiced but genuine, offering news for a penny, a price that barely covers the bread he'll bring home. A group of older boys, their caps pulled low, linger across the street, their eyes fixed on him. And Thomas tenses, knowing they're part of a gang that demands a cut of his earnings. A common threat in Chicago's rough streets as police logs from 1882 often detailed. He grips his papers tighter, his knuckles whitening, and keeps shouting, refusing to let them scare him off. Back at the tenement, Ellen and Maggie step into the courtyard, a narrow patch of dirt framed by sagging buildings and strung with laundry lines. The air here is no cleaner, heavy with the smell of boiling laundry and the faint rot of garbage piled near the single pump that serves 30 families. Maggie, her small hands clutching a tin bucket, joins the line of women and children waiting for water. They chatter a mix of English, Polish, and Italian, a testament to the South Side's melting pot, where over 40% of residents were foreign-born per census records. Ellen keeps a close eye on Maggie, her heart tight with worry about the diphtheria that swept through the tenement, claiming lives with a speed that city health reports called alarming. A woman beside her, Mrs. Kowalski, a Polish widow with a lined face, murmurs about a neighbor's child who didn't make it through the night, her voice low to avoid frightening the children. Ellen nods, her hand tightening on Maggie's shoulder, and whispers a quick prayer, a habit she's clung to since Ireland. The pump sputters, spitting out murky water that Maggie catches in her bucket, her face scrunched with effort as she hauls it back toward the tenement. The courtyard is a hive of activity, women scrubbing clothes on washboards, sharing scraps of news. a German mother scolding her son for stealing a carrot, an Italian girl braiding Maggie's hair as a quick kindness. Ellen feels the weight of the day ahead, her shift at the garment workshop looming, where she'll bend over a sewing machine for hours, earning pennies per shirt in a room thick with lint and desperation. She glances at the sky, the pink dawn fading into grey, and thinks of John, already halfway to the mill, his lunch bundle tucked in his coat. The city's pulse is everywhere, in the clatter of a milk cart rattling past, the whistle of a factory signaling the start of a shift, the laughter of children playing despite the hunger in their eyes. Thomas, at his corner, makes his first sale, a penny from a businessman who barely glances at him, but it's enough to spark a grin. He tucks the coin into his pocket, careful to keep it hidden from the gang across the street. Their leader, a lanky boy named Frankie, spitting on the ground as he watches. Thomas knows the game, pay up or get roughed up, but he's quicker than most, and he's learned to talk his way out of trouble, a skill that's kept him safe so far. He calls out another headline, this one about a labor meeting broken up by police last night, a topic that's got the city's workers whispering, as union records from the era noted. The rail depot hums with activity, trains unloading crates of grain and steel, men shouting orders, horses snorting as they pull heavy loads. Chicago is a city of motion, its railroads the arteries of its growth, carrying goods that make millionaires downtown while boys like Thomas scrape by on pennies. Back in the courtyard, Maggie spills a bit of water as she holds her bucket up the tenement stairs, Ellen steadying her with a gentle hand. They pass a neighbor, Mr. Rossi, an Italian cobbler with a cough. That's grown worse, a sound that makes Ellen's stomach twist, knowing tuberculosis is as common as rain in these crowded buildings, with city reports noting it killed 1 in 5 residents. Inside their room, Kathleen is up, stirring a pot of thin porridge over a small coal stove, her hands trembling but determined. She tells Maggie a story of Ireland, of fields green enough to make you forget hunger, her voice a soft thread connecting them to a past that feels like a dream. Maggie listens, her eyes wide, but her stomach growls, a reminder that dreams don't fill bellies. Ellen sets the bucket down, her mind already on the workshop, where the foreman's sharp voice and the endless hum of machines wait. She kisses Maggie's forehead, tells her to stay close to Kathleen, and grabs her shawl, stepping back into the courtyard's chaos. The tenement is a world of its own, a fragile web of neighbors who share what little they have. A loaf of bread, a bit of coal, a warning about the landlord's latest rent hike. Ellen hears a snippet of gossip about a new electric line being strung nearby, a marvel that has the city buzzing. As newspapers of 1880 heralded Chicago's early steps toward electrification, she thinks of John, wondering if he's reached the mill yet, if the furnaces are already testing his strength. John, meanwhile, is deep in the South Side's maze, passing a new brick warehouse, its walls still smelling of fresh mortar, a symbol of Chicago's relentless push forward. The street is a river of people, Irish laborers, Polish butchers, German bakers, all moving with purpose, their faces etched with the same mix of hope and exhaustion John carries. A boy no older than Maggie darts past, selling matches, his bare feet black with soot, a sight that twists John's heart, knowing his own children are one bad day away from the same fate. The mill is still miles off, its smokestacks visible now, belching black clouds that blot out the morning sky. John's legs ache, but he keeps moving, driven by the thought of the $1.50 he'll earn, enough to keep the landlord at bay another week. The city's noise is a constant companion, the clang of a streetcar bell, the shout of a newsboy who isn't Thomas, the low moan of a foghorn from the Chicago River. Back at the depot, Thomas makes another sale, this time to a factory worker who lingers, asking about the labor meeting in the paper. Thomas hesitates, sensing trouble, but answers carefully, knowing talk of unions is dangerous, especially with police cracking down, as historical records of the era confirm. The gang across the street moves closer, Frankie's eyes locked on Thomas, and the air tightens, a storm brewing in the morning light. Ellen, now halfway to the workshop, weaves through a market street, where vendors hawk wilted vegetables and day-old fish, their voices competing with the clatter of carts. She pauses at a stall, trading a precious penny for a bruised apple for Maggie. a small treat to brighten her day. The market is a riot of color and noise, women bargaining in a dozen languages, children stealing scraps, a policeman twirling his baton as he watches the crowd. Ellen's thoughts flicker to Thomas, hoping he's safe, to John, praying he avoids the mill's dangers, to Kathleen, whose cough grows worse each winter. The city is a crucible, forging lives like the Callahans in its heat, testing their resilience with every step. Thomas, feeling the gang's eyes on him, decides to move his crate to another corner. A risky choice, but better than a fight he can't win. He grabs his papers, his heart pounding, and slips into the crowd, his small frame disappearing among the depot's chaos. The city's pulse is relentless, pulling the Callahans in different directions, each member facing their own battles, their own dreams. John nears the mill, its roar growing louder, a beast waiting to swallow him for another day. Ellen steps toward the workshop, her hands already aching for the needle. Maggie and Kathleen huddle in their room, the tenement's walls closing in, yet holding them together. The morning is young and Chicago's streets are alive with stories. Stories that will carry the Callahans into moments of risk, connection, and quiet courage, waiting just beyond the next corner. The pulse of Chicago quickens as the morning sun climbs, casting long shadows across the South Side's crowded streets, where every step carries the weight of survival. John Callahan feels it in his bones, the city's rhythm driving him forward as he nears the steel mill, its smokestacks looming like sentinels, belching black clouds that choke the sky. The air grows hotter, heavier, laced with the sharp bite of molten metal, a smell that clings to him like a second skin. As labor reports from 1880 to describe the mill's relentless assault on the senses, his boots worn thin from months of trudging these 12 miles kick up dust. As he passes a row of new warehouses, their brick facades a stark contrast to the wooden shanties, still scarred from the Great Fire S-Wrath. The mill's roar is audible now, a low growl that drowns out the street's clamor, the clatter of carts, the shouts of vendors, the laughter of children stealing moments of play. John's thoughts flicker to Ellen, now nearing her garment workshop, to Thomas, dodging trouble at his newspaper corner, to Maggie and Kathleen, holding the tenement together with their quiet strength. The city is a crucible, forging lives like theirs in its heat, and John knows the mill will test him today as it does every day, with its promise of $1.50 and its threat of injury or worse. Across town, Ellen weaves through the market's fading chaos, the bruised apple for Maggie. Tucked in her shawl, her steps quickening as she approaches the workshop, a squat brick building, where the hum of sewing machines spills into the street. The air here is thick with lint and sweat, a suffocating mix that catches in her throat. As garment workers' accounts from the era often noted, she pushes open the heavy door, joining a line of women, Irish, Polish, Italian, their faces etched with the same weary determination, their hands already moving to claim their stations. The foreman, a weary man with a sharp voice, barks orders, his eyes scanning for any sign of slowness, a threat that keeps Ellen's fingers nimble despite the ache in her wrists. She'll earn 3 cents per shirt today, maybe 20 cents total if she pushes through the pain, a wage that barely dents the rent but keeps the Callahans from the street. Back at the rail depot, Thomas clutches his stack of newspapers, his heart still racing from slipping past Frankie's gang, their eyes burning holes in his back as he sets up at a new corner. The depot is a whirlwind, trains unloading crates, men shouting, horses snorting, and Thomas's voice rises above it, calling out headlines about a new electric line and a labor dispute that got the city buzzing as 1882 newspapers reported. He sold 3 papers now, 3 pennies closer to the bread he'll bring home, but the gang's shadow looms, a reminder that every penny comes with a price. In the tenement, Maggie helps Kathleen stir the thin porridge, her small hands careful not to spill, while Kathleen's stories of Ireland weave a fragile thread to a past Maggie can only imagine. The room is stifling, the coal stove's heat mixing with the damp rot of the walls, a breeding ground for the tuberculosis that's claimed neighbors, as city health reports grimly noted, with 1 in 5 deaths tied to the disease. Maggie's eyes dart to the window, longing for the courtyard's bustle, but Kathleen keeps her close, wary of the diphtheria that spread like wildfire, killing 2 children this month alone. The tenement's walls pulse with life, the coughs, prayers, and arguments of 30 families packed into this crumbling building. a microcosm of Chicago's 500,000 souls, nearly half foreign-born, as the 1880 census recorded. John steps into the mill, the heat hitting him like a fist, the air shimmering with the glow of molten steel. The furnaces roar, a deafening beast that swallows voices, forcing workers to shout or gesture. As labor accounts describe the chaotic din of Chicago's steel industry, he takes his place at a rolling machine, a hulking mass of iron that shapes red-hot steel into rails. Each pass a dance with danger no guards or shut-offs to protect him a fact. That led to countless injuries, as Union records later detailed. His hands, scarred from years of this work, grip the levers, his eyes locked on the glowing metal, knowing one misstep could cost him a limb or his life. The mill is a world of its own. 200 men moving in grim sync, their faces blackened with soot, their bodies bent under the weight of 12-hour shifts. John's partner, a burly Swede named Lars, nods to him, their only communication a glance that says they've got each other's backs. A sheet of steel slips, screeching against the rollers, and John yanks the lever just in time. His arm grazed by a spark that leaves a red welt, a reminder of the mill's unforgiving nature. He wipes sweat from his brow, his heart pounding, and thinks of Ellen, hoping her day is safer than his. At the workshop, Ellen's needle flies, stitching collars with a precision that comes from years of practice, her mind half on her work, half on Maggie, Thomas, and John. The room is a haze of dust, the machines hum a constant drone, and the women around her work in silence, their hands a blur. A Polish woman, Anna, beside her, whispers about a fire at a nearby workshop last week, a tragedy that killed 3 as newspapers reported, sparking fear that their own building with its locked doors and narrow stairs could be next. Talk of a union meeting surfaces, hushed and dangerous, but Ellen hesitates, knowing the foreman's spies are listening, a reality that kept Chicago's garment workers in check. As labor histories noted, she pushes the thought aside, focusing on her stitches, each one a small act of defiance against the hunger waiting at home. Thomas, at his new corner, feels the crowd's energy shift, the depot swelling with midday travelers, a chance to sell more papers. He calls out a headline about a new bridge over the Chicago River, his voice cracking with effort, drawing a tired smile from a passing conductor. Frankie's gang is nowhere in sight, but Thomas knows they'll find him. Their turf rules as rigid as the mill's machines. He tucks another penny into his pocket, his mind racing with plans for a clerk job he heard about at the rail office, a step up from the streets, a dream his parents don't yet know. The depot's noise is a living thing, the screech of brakes, the clatter of crates, the multilingual shouts of workers, a reflection of Chicago's role as the nation's rail hub, moving goods that built fortunes downtown. As economic records of the era confirm, back in the tenement, Maggie slips into the courtyard, sent by Kathleen to fetch more water, her bucket swinging as she dodges a group of boys playing stickball. The courtyard is a chaos of life, women scrubbing laundry, their hands red from lye, sharing news of a neighbor's death, a German tailor whose cough finally won, a loss that weighs heavy as tuberculosis deaths were a daily reality per health logs. Maggie listens, her eyes wide, but keeps moving, knowing Kathleen's watching from the window. A girl her age, Sophia, an Italian with a quick laugh, offers to carry the bucket, and they chatter about a street fair coming Sunday, a rare moment of joy in a world of want. Kathleen, alone now, needs dough for a small loaf, her hands slow but stubborn, refusing to let pain stop her. She hums an old Irish tune, her voice faint, a thread to a life left behind, and thinks of John and Ellen out there in the city's jaws. John, at the mill, feels the hours drag, the heat sapping his strength, his arms burning from the lever's weight. A shout cuts through the din, another worker caught in a machine, his cry sharp and brief before he's pulled free, bloodied but alive, a scene to common. As injury reports from 1882 Mills noted nearly daily accidents, John helps carry him to a corner where a foreman shrugs, no doctor called, no pay for lost time. A harsh truth that fueled the labor unrest simmering in Chicago, laying roots for the Haymarket affair years later. He returns to his machine, his jaw tight, the sparks welt throbbing, but he pushes on, driven by the thought of Maggie's smile, Ellen's touch, Thomas's ambition. Ellen, at her machine, feels the foreman's eyes on her, his voice snapping at a girl who slowed, a reminder of the job's fragility. Anna leans close, her whisper urgent, asking if Ellen will join the union talk tonight, a risk that could change everything or cost her job. Ellen's heart races, torn between fear and the faint hope of better days, a dilemma countless workers faced, as union records showed. The workshop's air grows thicker, the lint coating her throat, but she keeps sewing, her hands steady, her mind on the family waiting for her. Thomas sells another paper, his stack thinning, his pocket heavier with pennies, but the gang reappears, Frankie at the lead, his grin sharp as a knife. Thomas stands his ground, his voice steady, offering a penny to keep the peace. A deal he hates but needs, a survival tactic learned on Chicago's streets, where boys like him balanced bravado and caution, as police reports often noted. The depot's chaos shields him, the crowd a buffer, but he knows the day is not done with him yet. Maggie and Sophia reach the pump, their laughter cutting through the courtyard's grim air, a spark of childhood that draws a smile from a weary washerwoman. The water runs clearer today, a small mercy, but Maggie's careful, knowing Kathleen's warnings about disease. She thinks of her father, wondering if the mill's as loud as the courtyard of her brother, hoping he's safe from the gangs. The tenement hums, a fragile community bound by shared struggles, shared hopes. John, Ellen, Thomas, Maggie, Kathleen, each caught in their own battle, yet tied to the others. Their lives woven into the city's fabric. The mill's roar, the workshop's hum, the depot's clamor, the courtyard's chatter, all part of Chicago's relentless heartbeat. A city that demands everything and gives just enough to keep dreams alive. The day is far from over, and the Callahan story is about to deepen, their paths crossing with risks and choices that will test their courage, their bonds, their place in this unforgiving city. The sun hangs high over Chicago's south side, its light struggling through a veil of smoke and dust, casting a hazy glow on a city that never pauses. John Callahan, his arms still stinging from the sparks welt, finds a brief respite. In the steel mill's midday break, a precious 20 minutes to sit on a crate and unwrap the cloth bundle. Ellen packed a meager lunch of bread and cheese that tastes like home despite its simplicity. The mill's roar softens slightly, the furnace is idling, but the heat lingers, pressing against his sweat-soaked shirt, a reminder of the 12-hour shift still stretching ahead. As labor reports from 1880 to describe the grueling pace of Chicago's steel industry, his thoughts drift to Ellen, stitching in the workshop's stifling air, to Thomas, outsmarting the streets, to Maggie and Kathleen, holding the tenement together. Across town, Ellen takes her own break, stepping into the workshop's alley with a dozen other women, their faces flushed from hours bent over machines, their hands clutching bits of bread or an apple scraps shared in a quiet act of solidarity. A custom among garment workers, as social reformer accounts noted. The alley smells of garbage and coal, but it's a relief from the lint-choked air inside, where the hum of sewing machines never stops, earning her 3 cents per shirt, a wage that barely keeps the landlord at bay. Thomas, at the rail depot, catches a moment to count his pennies, 9 now, enough for a loaf if he's careful. But Frankie's gang lingers nearby, their eyes sharp, waiting for a chance to corner him. A threat as constant as the trains rolling through, as police logs from the era detailed. In the tenement courtyard, Maggie returns with a bucket, water sloshing as she navigates the chaos of laundry lines and playing children. Her friend Sophia at her side, their laughter a small rebellion against the day's weight. Kathleen waits in their cramped room, her hands kneading dough, her cough deeper now, a warning of the tuberculosis that haunts these walls, claiming 1 in 5 lives. As city health reports grimly recorded, the south side is a crucible, its midday hum a mix of hope and hardship, and the Callahans, scattered across its streets, are bound by a shared fight to make it through this day. John chews his bread slowly, savoring each bite, his eyes scanning the mill's yard, where workers slump against walls, their faces etched with exhaustion, some nursing burns or cuts from machines that offer no mercy, a reality that fueled labor unrest, as union records from 1880 to noted. He thinks of the man pulled from the rollers this morning, bloodied but alive, left in a corner with no doctor, no pay, a scene that repeats too often, leaving scars on body and soul. Lars, His Swedish partner sits nearby, muttering about a union meeting tonight, his voice low to avoid the foreman's ears, a risk John feels in his gut, knowing police broke up a similar gathering last night, as newspapers reported. He nods, non-committal, his mind torn between the promise of better wages and the fear of losing what little they have. The mill's whistle shrieks, signaling the end of the break, and John rises, his arm throbbing, his body heavy, but driven by the thought of Maggie's letters, Thomas's dreams. Ellen's steady hands. Ellen, in the alley, shares a crust with Anna, the Polish woman whose whisper about the union meeting lingers in her mind. A dangerous spark in a city where bosses wield power like a club, as labor histories described. Anna's eyes are fierce, her voice barely audible, urging Ellen to come tonight, to stand for a 10-hour day, for safer conditions, but Ellen hesitates. Her thoughts on John's safety, on Maggie's health, on the rent due tomorrow. A shout from the workshop door snaps her back, the foreman calling them in, his glare a warning against lingering. Ellen slips the apple from her shawl, saving it for Maggie, and returns to her machine, the hunt swallowing her thoughts, her fingers racing to keep up, each stitch a prayer for her family's survival. The workshop is a pressure cooker, the air thick with dust, the women's silence broken only by the clatter of needles. A scene unchanged since the sweatshop sprang up post-fire, employing thousands, mostly women, as economic records noted. Thomas, at his corner, sells another paper, his stack dwindling, his voice hoarse, but steady, calling out headlines about a new city ordinance, his quick smile drawing a nod from a passing clerk. Franky's gang moves closer, their footsteps deliberate, and Thomas feels the air tighten, his hand slipping to the penny he offered earlier, a deal they didn't take. He spots a policeman across the depot, twirling his baton, a small comfort but no guarantee, as police often turned a blind eye to street gangs, per 1882 logs. Thomas shifts his crate, keeping the crowd between him and Frankie, his mind racing with the clerk job rumor, a chance to escape these corners, a dream he guards like the pennies in his pocket. The depot's chaos is his shield, trains rumbling, crates slamming, voices shouting in a dozen languages, a reflection of Chicago's role as a global hub, moving goods that built skyscrapers, while boys like Thomas scraped by as economic histories confirmed. In the courtyard, Maggie and Sophia reach the pump, their chatter pausing as Mrs. Kowalski, the Polish widow, shares a boiled potato, her hands trembling from years of laundry work, a gesture of community that kept tenements alive, as social reformers like Jane Addams later wrote. Maggie accepts it, her stomach growling, and listens as Mrs. Kowalski whispers about the tailor's death, his body prepared for burial by neighbors, a custom in these crowded buildings where death was a frequent visitor, per health records. Maggie's eyes widen, but Sophia pulls her into a game, tossing a pebble between laundry lines. Their laughter drawing glares from tired women, but lighting the courtyard with a flicker of joy. Kathleen, in the room, finishes the dough, her cough rattling as she sets it to rise. Her thoughts on Ireland, on the children she's raised, on the city that's both a promise and a thief. She glances at the window, watching Maggie below, her heart heavy with love and fear. Knowing diphtheria stalks the tenement, a silent killer that took to children this month. As city reports noted, the tenement is a fragile web, neighbors sharing bread, coal, grief, their lives intertwined in ways the city's millionaires will never know. John, back at the mill, grips the levers again, the steel's heat searing his face, his welt burning with each movement. A shout nearby, another close call, a worker's sleeve caught in a roller, freed before it's too late, but the fear lingers. A constant shadow in a mill where injuries were as common as pay, per labor accounts. John exchanges a look with Lars, their bond forged in these dangers. Their talk of unions a whispered hope that could cost them everything. Ellen, at her machine, feels the foreman's shadow pass, his voice snapping at a young Italian girl. Maria, who winces as her stitches falter, her hands shaking from hunger. Ellen slips her a bit of bread under the table, a small kindness that could earn a reprimand. But the women here watch out for each other, a quiet resistance against the workshop's grind as oral histories from the era recalled. Anna's whisper about the union meeting echoes and Ellen's heart races, the risk pulling at her. The thought of John in the mill's jaws pushing her closer to saying yes. Thomas makes another sale, his stack nearly gone, his pocket heavy with 12 pennies now, a small victory shadowed by Frankie's gang who've circled closer, their grins sharp. He spots the policeman again, closer now, and calls out louder, his voice a shield. His mind on the clerk job, a chance to be more than a newsboy, a dream that feels closer with every penny. The depot's noise swells, a train's whistle piercing the air, crates crashing, men shouting. A city in constant motion, its wealth built on the backs of workers like John, women like Ellen, boys like Thomas. Maggie and Sophia finish at the pump, hauling the bucket up the tenement stairs, their laughter fading as they pass Mr. Rossi's door, his cough quieter now, a sign that worries Maggie. Who's heard Kathleen's warnings about the disease? Inside, Kathleen slices the potato Maggie brought, her hands slow but careful, her cough hidden so Maggie won't worry. The room feels smaller, the walls closing in with the weight of their lives. But Kathleen's stories keep it at bay, tales of Cork's green hills, of a life before this city's hunger. The courtyard below hums, women trading news, a Polish mother singing to her baby, an Irish man fixing a broken chair, a community stitched together by need, as reformer accounts described. John, Ellen, Thomas, Maggie, Kathleen, each carries their own burden yet leans on the others. There lives a delicate balance in a city that gives no quarter. The mill's heat, the workshop's dust, the depot's chaos, the tenement's fragility. All part of Chicago's midday song, a song that carries the Callahans forward, toward moments of choice and connection that will shape their evening, their future, their place in this relentless city. The evening sky over Chicago's south side darkens a bruised purple, swallowing the last of the sun's glow as the city's clamor shifts to a restless hum. The clatter of streetcars giving way to the murmur of voices spilling from saloons and tenements. John Callahan trudges from the steel mill, his body aching from 12 hours of wrestling red-hot steel. The welt on his arm a throbbing reminder of the day's dangers as labor reports from 1880 noted. The toll of Chicago's mills where injuries were a daily tax on survival. The air is cooler now, but heavy with the lingering stench of smoke and sweat. And John's steps are slow, his boots scuffing the cobblestones as he begins the long walk back to the tenement. The $1.50 in his pocket a fragile shield against the landlord's demands. His mind churns with Lars's whispered talk of a union meeting tonight, a clandestine gathering near the Chicago River, a spark of hope that could ignite better wages, or burn away his job, a risk that weighed on thousands of workers as union records from the era documented. Across town, Ellen slips out of the garment workshop, her hands cramped from stitching her 20 cents earned with a day's worth of sweat, and fear the foreman's glare still burning in her memory, as garment workers' accounts describe the constant threat of dismissal. Anna's urgent whisper about the union meeting echoes, pulling at her a chance to fight for a 10-hour day, for a life beyond this grind. But the thought of losing her job, of leaving Maggie and Thomas hungry, knots her stomach. Thomas at the rail depot ties up his empty newspaper sack, 15 pennies jangling in his pocket, a small triumph shadowed by Frankie's gang, who trailed him all day, their threat as constant as the trains. Rumble a reality for street boys as 1880 to police logs noted. He's heard more about the clerk job at the rail office, a rumor now solidifying into a real chance, a step towards stability that makes his heart race, a dream he hasn't yet shared with John or Ellen. In the tenement, Maggie sits by Kathleen, helping fold laundry, her small hands careful, as Kathleen's cough deepens, a sound that tightens Maggie's chest, knowing tuberculosis has claimed another neighbor, Mr. Rossi, whose body lies in a room down the hall prepared for burial by women like Mrs. Kowalski, a ritual common in tenements as health reports confirmed. The south side is a tapestry of light and shadow, its evening air thick with the weight of choices. And the Callahans, scattered by the day's demands, are about to converge, their paths weaving together in a city that tests their courage at every turn. John's walk takes him past a saloon, its laughter and clinking glasses a temptation he ignores. His mind on the tenement, on Ellen's tired smile, on Maggie's chatter. The streets are quieter now, but alive with purpose, lamplighters igniting gaslights, their flickers battling the dusk, a sign of Chicago's march toward modernity. as newspapers of the era heralded the city's growing infrastructure. He passes a church, its doors open, women praying for husbands and children, their rosaries a soft rhythm against the city's noise. John's thoughts turn to the union meeting, Lars's words ringing, a 10-hour day, safer machines, a future where Maggie might go to school, where Thomas might rise above the streets. But the risk is real. Police raids on labor gatherings were common as 1882 reports noted, and John knows a wrong move could leave them homeless. He quickens his pace, the tenement's dim outline visible now, a beacon in the growing dark. Ellen, leaving the workshop, joins a group of women heading home, their steps heavy, but their voices light with shared stories, a Polish woman joking about the foreman's bad breath, an Italian girl mimicking his scowl, a fleeting bond that keeps them sane as oral histories from garment workers recalled. Anna walks beside her, her voice low, pressing Ellen about the union meeting. Her eyes alight with a fire Ellen both admires and fears. Ellen nods, her heart torn, thinking of John in the mill, of the spark that grazed him, of the stories of workers crushed by machines, left with nothing. The street is a river of people, workers streaming from factories, children darting through alleys, vendors packing up carts, their cries fading as night falls. Ellen clutches the apple for Maggie, a small promise kept, and thinks of Thomas, hoping he's dodged the gangs, hoping his pennies will stretch far enough. Thomas, free of the depot's chaos, slips through the crowd, his empty sack slung over his shoulder, his eyes scanning for Frankie's gang, who vanished for now, a relief that feels temporary. He passes a rail office, its windows glowing, and pauses, imagining himself behind a desk. A clerk with a clean shirt, a job that doesn't bruise his knuckles or his pride. The rumor came from a conductor, a man who saw Thomas's quick mind and said to ask tomorrow a chance. That could change everything, a rare opportunity for a boy from the tenements, where only 10% of children rose beyond manual labor, as social reformers later noted. Thomas hurries toward the tenement, his 15 pennies a weight he guards, his mind racing with dreams he's afraid to voice. In the tenement, Maggie folds a worn shirt, her fingers mimicking Ellen's precision, while Kathleen tells a story of a cork festival, her voice soft but strained, her cough breaking through, a sound that makes Maggie flinch, knowing the tailor's fate, knowing the diphtheria that stalks their halls, as health reports recorded its deadly spread. The room is dim, the oil lamps flicker, casting shadows, the air thick with the smell of porridge, and damp plaster a reminder of the tenement's fragility, where 30 families shared one pump, to outhouses and countless fears per city sanitation logs. Maggie glances at the door, hoping for Ellen's return, her stomach tight with worry for John and Thomas out there in the city's jaws. The tenement hums with evening life, neighbors' voices drifting through thin walls. A Polish lullaby, an Irish argument, a German prayer, a community bound by necessity, as reformer accounts described. Down the hall, Mrs. Kowalski and other women prepare Mr. Rossi's body, washing it with care, wrapping it in a clean sheet. A ritual that honors the dead while reminding the living of their own fragility. A scene repeated across Chicago's tenements where death was as familiar as hunger. Kathleen sends Maggie to the courtyard for a last bucket of water, her voice sharp with fear of disease, and Maggie obeys, stepping into the evening air, where the courtyard is quieter. Now laundry lines, still children gone, women gathering to share news, their voices low with grief. For the tailor, Sophia joins her chatter about the street fair fading as she sees Maggie's worry, offering a hand to carry the bucket, a small kindness that lights the dusk. John reaches the tenement, his steps heavy, his body screaming for rest, but his mind alive with the union meeting's pull. He climbs the rickety stairs, each creak a reminder of the home he's fighting for, and pushes open the door to find Kathleen slicing bread, her cough hidden, Maggie not yet back. He drops his coat, the $1.50 safe in his pocket, and asks about Ellen and Thomas, his voice rough with worry. Kathleen nods to the courtyard, her eyes soft but tired, and John feels the weight of their life. The tenement's walls closing in, the city's demands never easing. Ellen nears the tenement, her shawl tight against the evening chill. Anna's words about the union meeting burning in her mind, a choice she can't shake a chance. To fight for something better, to stand with John if he's willing. She spots Maggie and Sophia at the pump, their bucket full, and calls to them. her voice a beacon in the dark, her heart lifting at Maggie's smile, the apple still in her shawl. Thomas rounds the corner, his steps quick, his eyes scanning for trouble. But the street is calm, the gang gone for now, a small mercy in a day of battles. He reaches the tenement just as Ellen does, their eyes meeting. A silent check that they've both made it through. The family gathers in their cramped room, John, Ellen, Thomas, Maggie, Kathleen. Their earnings pooled, $1.75 and 15 pennies, a fortune and a pittance. Enough to keep the landlord at bay, not enough to dream too big. The air is heavy with Mr. Rossi's death, the women's voices drifting from his room, a reminder of the tenement's fragility, where tuberculosis and diphtheria were relentless, as health reports noted. John and Ellen exchange a look, the union meeting unspoken between them, a choice that could change everything, a risk that could break them. Thomas hesitates, then speaks, his voice low, about the clerk job, a dream he's held close, a chance to rise, to ease their burdens, a hope rare for boys like him as social history's confirmed. Maggie listens, her eyes wide, clutching the apple Ellen hands her, a small joy in a world of want. Kathleen coughs, her hand covering her mouth, and the room stills, the weight of their fears pressing down. The tenement is alive around them, neighbors mourning, praying, arguing, a community that holds them together, even as the city pulls them apart. John feels the pull of the union meeting, a chance to fight for Maggie's school, for Thomas's dreams, for Ellen's safety. But the police raid last night looms, a warning of the cost as newspapers reported. Ellen, her hand on Maggie's shoulder, thinks of Anna's fire, of the workshop's dangers, of John's welt, and feels the meeting's call, a step towards something better or toward ruin. The evening deepens, the city's gaslights flickering its pulse steady but unforgiving, and the Callahans stand at a crossroads, their choices shaping not just this night, but the days to come in a city that never stops demanding, never stops dreaming. Night settles over Chicago's south side like a heavy blanket, the gaslights casting pools of flickering gold. Against the dark their glow a faint challenge to the city's relentless pulse, now softened to a murmur of footsteps and distant laughter. John Callahan sits in the tenement's cramped room, the oil lamps weak like carving shadows across his face, his $1.50 heavy in his pocket, his mind heavier with the choice before him. The union meeting by the Chicago River, a whisper of change that could lift his family or crush them. As labor records from 1880 noted the growing unrest among workers like him. Ellen, beside him, sets the apple on the table, her 20 cents added to the family's pool, her eyes meeting John's, both wrestling with the same unspoken question, will they risk everything for a better tomorrow? A dilemma that haunted thousands in Chicago's mills and workshops, as union history's documented. Thomas's 15 pennies counted sits on the floor, his voice quiet as he shares his dream of the clerk job, a chance to escape the streets, to wear a clean shirt, to ease the burden on his parents, a rare hope for a boy from the tenements, where only 1 in 10 rose beyond labor per social reformer accounts. Maggie curls against Ellen, her small hands clutching the apple, her eyes darting to Kathleen, whose cough breaks the silence, a reminder of the tuberculosis that took Mr. Rossi, whose body lies down the hall, mourned by neighbors in a ritual as old as the tenements themselves, as health reports confirmed. The South Side's night is alive with quiet intensity, its people gathering strength for another day, and the Callahans, bound by love and necessity, stand at the edge of choices that will shape their place in this unforgiving city. John rises, his decision made, his coat pulled tight as he slips out, whispering to Ellen to stay with Maggie, his steps quick toward the river, where the union meeting waits. A clandestine gathering in a warehouse's shadow, its promise of a 10-hour day and safer machines, tempered by the risk of police raids, as newspapers reported frequent crackdowns in 1882. Ellen watches him go, her heart torn, Anna's words burning, the union meeting a call she feels too. But Maggie's warmth anchors her, the fear of losing their home, their stability, a weight she carries, as garment workers' accounts noted the constant fear of reprisal. She tucks Maggie closer, her mind racing, wondering if John will return whole, if the meeting will spark change or disaster. Thomas, restless, asks to go to the rail office tomorrow to chase the clerk job, his voice steady, but his eyes pleading, a dream John and Ellen nod to, their pride mixed with worry. knowing the streets are kinder than most offices to boys like him. Kathleen, her cough quieter now, tells a story of a Cork night, her voice a soft thread to a past that holds them together, her hands folding Maggie's small shirt, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her illness may soon leave them as tuberculosis claimed countless lives per city health logs. The tenement hums around them, neighbors' voices drifting, a Polish lullaby, an Italian prayer, the soft clink of coins counted in another room, a community stitched by shared grief and hope. As reformer accounts described, John reaches the river, its dark waters reflecting the gaslights, the warehouse a hulking shape, where men gather, their faces hidden in the shadows, their whispers urgent laws among them. His voice low but fierce, speaking of strikes, of unity, of a future where workers aren't crushed by machines or poverty, a vision that fueled Chicago's labor movement, laying roots for the Haymarket affair years later. As history's noted, the air is thick with tension, footsteps echoing, and John's heart pounds, knowing police could storm in, as they did last night, leaving men bruised or jobless. Per newspaper accounts, he listens, his wealth throbbing, his mind on Maggie's letters, Thomas's ambition, Ellen's strength, and speaks, his voice rough but clear, pledging to stand with them, a choice that could change everything or end it. Ellen in the tenement helps Maggie practice her letters, a scrap of paper and a stub of pencil, their only tools, a defiance against the tenement's limits, where only 60% of children attended school, as Jane Addams later reported. Maggie traces an M, her tongue poking out, her joy a light in the dim room. But Ellen's thoughts are with John, imagining the meeting's dangers, the police batons, the foreman's blacklists. She glances at Kathleen, whose cough has stilled, her face pale, and feels a chill, knowing the disease's toll, knowing they can't afford a doctor, a reality that plagued tenement families, as health reports confirmed. Thomas sits by the window, watching the courtyard where women gather for Mr. Rossi's wake, their voices soft as they share bread and memories, a ritual that binds them. As social histories noted the strength of tenement communities, he thinks of the clerk job, the conductor's nod, the chance to be more than a newsboy. To spare Ellen's hands, John's scars. The courtyard glows with a single lantern, Sophia's laughter gone, her family among the mourners. And Thomas feels the weight of their loss, the fragility of their world where diphtheria and tuberculosis were as constant as rent per city records. Maggie, finishing her letters, asks about the street fair, her voice hopeful, and Ellen promises they'll go, a small lie to keep her smiling, knowing the pennies won't stretch that far. Kathleen hums, her voice faint, and Ellen's heart twists. The fear of losing her mother-in-law as real as the fear of losing John to the meeting risks. John, at the warehouse, feels the meeting's heat rise, men arguing over a strike. Lars pushing for action, others urging caution, the air crackling with the weight of their choices. A scene that echoed across Chicago's factories as labor accounts detailed. A sudden shout, boots on cobblestones, and the men scatter, police whistles piercing the night. A raid like the one last night, leaving John to slip into an alley, his heart racing, his body bruised from a stumble but free, a narrow escape that leaves him shaken but resolute, his pledge to the Union intact, a step toward a future he can't yet see. He hurries back, the river's dark gleam behind him, the city's gaslights guiding his way. His thoughts on Ellen, on the family waiting in the tenement's fragile embrace. Ellen hears the courtyard stir, voices rising as women return from the wake. Their grief a shared burden misses. Kowalski's eyes red but kind as she offers a bit of bread, a gesture that keeps the tenement alive. As reformer accounts noted, Maggie, sleepy now, clings to the apple, her letters done, her small victory a spark in the gloom. Thomas speaks again of the clerk job, his voice firmer, and Ellen nods, her pride fierce, her fear hidden, knowing tomorrow he'll face the rail office, a world that rarely opens to boys like him. Kathleen coughs, softer now, and Ellen helps her to the chair, her hands gentle, her heart heavy with the day's weight, John's absence a gnawing worry. The tenement's walls pulse with life, a baby's cry, a man's laugh, a woman's prayer, a community that holds them together, even as disease and poverty threaten to tear them apart. John reaches the tenement, his breath ragged, his coat torn from the alley's scramble, but alive. His eyes finding Ellen's as he steps inside, their silence speaking volumes. The union meetings risk a shared secret, They sit, the family whole again, John's $1.50, Ellen's 20 cents, Thomas's 15 pennies. A small fortune that buys another day, another chance. Maggie bites into the apple, its crunch a rare joy, and Thomas shares his plan to visit the rail office at dawn, his voice steady. His dream closer now. Kathleen tells one last story of a cork dawn, her cough quiet, her smile a gift to Maggie, who listens, eyes heavy. The tenement courtyard hums below, neighbors gathering, an Irish fiddle playing, a Polish song joining in, an Italian voice laughing, a tapestry of sound that weaves the South Side's night, a reflection of Chicago's multicultural heart, as newspapers of 1880 noted its vibrant diversity. John and Ellen exchange a look, the union meeting a spark between them, a choice to fight to stand despite the risks, a decision that mirrors the city's own rebirth. From fire its people building futures, from ashes as historical accounts celebrated. Thomas's clerk job, a small step, feels like a beacon, a chance to rise, to carry the family forward, a hope rare but real as social history's confirmed. The night deepens, the gaslights dim, and the Callahans hold tight to each other, their small room a fortress against the city's hunger, their choices a quiet rebellion against its grind. The South Side sleeps, but its stories linger, stories of struggle and strength of families, like the Callahans whose lives built the city we know, whose dreams lit the way for tomorrow. A legacy waiting to be remembered, to be shared as we gather the threads of their day and weave them into the larger tapestry of Chicago's past. As dawn creeps over Chicago's South Side, a soft gray light filters through the haze of coal smoke, painting the tenement's cracked walls with the promise of a new day, a city reborn from fire and fueled by the dreams of families like the Callahans. The night has passed, its weight of choices and struggles settling into the bones of John, Ellen, Thomas, Maggie, and Kathleen, their small room a fortress of hope against the city's relentless grind. John's pledge at the union meeting, a whispered vow in a warehouse's shadow, binds him to a fight for safer mills, shorter days, a future where his children might know more than scars and hunger, a spark that would grow into Chicago's labor movement. As history is recorded in the years before the Haymarket Affair of 1886, Ellen's quiet nod to Anna's call, her heart torn between fear and fire, aligns her with John, their shared resolve a fragile thread weaving them through the tenement's trials. As garment workers' accounts noted the courage it took to even whisper of unions in 1882, Thomas, his 15 pennies spent on bread and a dream, stands ready to chase the clerk job at the rail office, his steps toward the depot this morning carrying the weight of his family's hopes, a rare chance for a boy from the streets where only 1 in 10 rose beyond labor, as social reformers like Jane Addams later documented. Maggie, her apple eaten, her letters traced, sleeps now, her small form curled against Ellen, her dreams untouched by the diphtheria and tuberculosis that stalked the tenement, claiming lives like Mr. Rossi's, whose weight-bound neighbors in grief and strength, a ritual as common as breathing, per city health reports. Kathleen, her cough quieter in the dawn's chill, holds tight to her stories of Ireland, her voice a bridge to a past that anchors Maggie, that steadies the family even as her illness threatens to pull her away, a reality that haunted tenement families, with 1 in 5 deaths tied to disease, as 1880s records noted. The South Side stirs its gaslights, fading its streets humming with the first carts, and shouts a city of 500,000 souls, nearly half foreign-born, as the 1880 census recorded each life. A thread in the tapestry of Chicago's rise from the ashes of the Great Fire. The Callahan story, one day in 1882, is a single stitch in that fabric, yet it holds the weight of countless others, immigrants who built skyscrapers, railroads, dreams. With their hands, their hearts, their sacrifices. John rises, his arms still sore from the mill's spark, his coat patched but warm, and steps to the window, watching the courtyard where women already gather their laundry lines, swaying their voices. A mix of Polish, Italian, Irish, German, a chorus of resilience that echoes the city's own as newspapers of the era celebrated its vibrant diversity. He thinks of the union meeting the police raid he escaped, the men who didn't, their faces bruised, but defiant, a memory that fuels his resolve to return, to fight for a day when Maggie might go to school, when Thomas might wear a clerk's collar, when Ellen's hands might rest, Ellen stirs her fingers cramped from yesterday's stitches her 20 cents safe in a tin under the bed. Her mind on Anna, on the union's promise, on John's safe return last night. His whispered account of the meeting, a spark that lights her own courage. She glances at Maggie, still sleeping, her pencil stub and paper scrap on the table. A small victory against the tenement's limits, where only 60% of children saw a classroom, as reformers noted. Ellen's heart lifts thinking of Thomas, who's already gone his steps quick toward the rail office. His 15 pennies spent, but his dream alive, a chance to be more than a newsboy to dodge Frankie's gang, for good to carry his family forward. Thomas moves through the dawn, the south side streets quiet but waking, the rail depot's hum already rising. Its trains the lifeblood of a city that moved the world's grain and steel, as economic records of 1880 to confirmed. He passes the office, its windows dark but promising, and rehearses his words, his voice steady, his heart pounding with the weight of a boy who knows this moment could change everything. A hope rare for tenement children as social history is documented. The conductor's nod yesterday, a fleeting kindness, is all he has, but it's enough to push him forward, his small frame straight, his eyes bright with the same fire that drives John and Ellen. Back in the tenement, Kathleen wakes Maggie, her cough soft but persistent, her hands gentle, as she braids Maggie's hair, telling one last story of a Cork sunrise, her voice a gift to a girl who may never see those green hills. Maggie listens, her eyes wide, her letters a secret pride, her apples sweetness a memory that carries her through the day's hunger, a hunger shared by thousands in Chicago's tenements, where families stretched every penny, as health reports noted. The courtyard below hums Mrs. Kowalski leading a prayer for Mr. Rossi, her voice steady, her hands worn from years of laundry, a leader in a community that buries its own shares, its bread holds its dreams, as reformer accounts described. The tenement is a world of its own, 30 families packed into crumbling walls, sharing one pump to outhouses, countless fears yet bound by a strength that Chicago's millionaires will never know, a strength that built the city's skyscrapers, its railroads, its future, as historical accounts celebrated. John and Ellen sit at the table, their earnings counted $1.75, and 15 pennies gone for bread, for rent, for survival, their eyes meeting a silent vow to keep fighting for Maggie, for Thomas, for Kathleen, for a life beyond the tenement's grip. The union meetings risk, the police raids shadow the mill's dangers. The workshops grind all weigh heavy, but so does their love, their hope, their refusal to break a defiance that echoes the city's own rebirth from fire, as newspapers of 1880 to heralded. Thomas reaches the rail office, its doors opening, the conductor there, his nod a signal to speak. And Thomas does, his voice clear, his dream laid bare. A boy from the south side asking for a chance, a moment that could shift his path, his family's path. A rare step up in a city where most stayed down, as social history is noted. Maggie in the courtyard helps Mrs. Kowalski with laundry, her small hands scrubbing, her laughter mixing with Sophia's, a spark of childhood that lights the morning, even as the tenement mourns, even as disease looms, a joy that defies the odds, as health reports noted the resilience of tenement children. Kathleen watches from the window, her cough hidden, her stories a legacy for Maggie, for a family that carries Ireland in its heart, Chicago in its hands. The south side wakes fully now, its streets alive with carts, shouts, the clatter of streetcars, the hum of factories, a city that never stops, that built itself from ashes to become a global giant, as economic records confirmed. The Callahan's Day, one among countless, is a story unwritten in history books, yet it holds the truth of Chicago's rise, the truth of a city built by hands like John's scarred, by steel, by hearts like Ellen's steady through fear, by dreams like Thomas's bold against the odds, by spirits like Maggie's bright, despite hunger, by memories like Kathleen's, a bridge to a past that fuels their future, their choices to fight for unions, to chase a clerk job, to trace letters, to share bread, to mourn together, are the stitches in Chicago's fabric, a city of immigrants, of workers, of dreamers, who turned a burned-out plane into a beacon of progress, as historical accounts celebrated. Their story is one of countless, yet it speaks for all, for the Irish, Polish, Italian, German souls who poured their lives into this city, who faced disease, danger, poverty, and still dreamed, still built, still loved. The tenement's walls, the mill's roar, the workshop's hum, the depot's chaos, the courtyard's laughter. All part of a city that rose because of families like the Callahans whose names may fade, but whose legacy endures in every skyscraper, every rail, every street that pulses with life. As the dawn brightens, the Callahans face another day, their hearts full of fight, their hands ready to work, their dreams are light against the dark, a story that doesn't end here, but it lives on. In the city they helped build, in the stories we uncover, in the past we bring to life. So come back to History Orbit, where every tale is a window to the people who shaped our world. Their struggles, their triumphs, their dreams waiting to be told. Subscribe now, hit that bell, and join us to explore more stories, more lives, more moments that made history. Because the Callahans' Day is just one spark, and countless others are waiting to light your way.